This is Ross Feingold on Taiwan Hashtag, coming to you from Taipei, Taiwan, hosted by the Storm Media. We're back to presidential politics and the race between Han Kuo-yu of the Kuomintang, the challenger, against the incumbent President Tsai Ing-wen of the DPP, Democratic Progressive Party. And of course, there's the third candidate, James Song-Chu-yu of the People First Party. Let's look at some polling information. But before we do that, let's take a step back and remember that earlier this year, at the beginning of 2019, coming out of the local elections in November 2018, Tsai Ing-wen's poll numbers were looking very, very bleak. In fact, her DPP did very poorly in the local elections, which were held a year ago in November. The Kuomintang captured or recaptured the mayor or county commissioners in several municipalities around Taiwan, a large number of city council and county council seats. It was such a big upset that President Tsai, who was chairman of the DPP at the time, she resigned, and then she also changed her premier as well. So her poll numbers were looking bad. The chances of re-election were not looking good. But starting from January up until now in early December, her poll numbers have increased and the Kuomintang candidates' poll numbers have decreased. They have crossed. Why did this happen? Here's something to be careful of when you're reading analysis about Taiwan, often written by those experts who don't live here in Taiwan. They love to say that Tsai Ing-wen's great poll numbers are largely because of China. China, as Donald Trump likes to call it. Is that really what happened? It's a factor. China, Xi Jinping, on January 2nd, he made a speech where he reiterated China's policies towards Taiwan. Frankly, it wasn't much new. He said, we want to unify, we'll even use force, and we want to implement the one country, two systems. Boo, no one likes one country, two systems here in Taiwan. But he said, we want to implement one country, two systems, and we love you, and we hope you'll unify under that structure. There was an immediate response from Tsai Ing-wen saying, nope, we don't accept one country, two systems, which, as we've talked about on previous programs, has long been the consensus here in Taiwan. So even the Kuomintang, which kind of sort of favors unification with China, or says that Taiwan shouldn't be independent, that it's part of China, they've also never favored or supported one country, two systems as a model for the relationship between Taiwan and China. So Tsai Ing-wen started talking about that. Nope, we don't want to unify in one country, two systems. Then the protests in Hong Kong began, and Tsai Ing-wen became very outspoken on social media in support of the protesters. So you get all these op-eds, commentaries written in publications, some of them very reputable publications, but again, written by people who don't live here in Taiwan, often talking about, well, it's all because of China, it's all because of Hong Kong, and that's why Tsai Ing-wen's poll numbers have increased so dramatically. But there's other things going on here in Taiwan as well. For starters, President Tsai devolved a lot of authority to the new premier, Su Tseng-chang, who took office after the previous premier, William Lai Ching-te, was fired. Incidentally, Lai Ching-te is now the vice presidential candidate for Tsai Ing-wen. Su Tseng-chang has generally performed well. The public seems to think that Su Tseng-chang and his team are doing a good job. Of course, they're doing a good job when compared to the previous cabinet, which led the DPP to electoral disaster in local polls because people took it out on the local candidates, their perceptions of poor performance by the central government leadership team led by William Lai. So Su Tseng-chang and his team have generally been perceived as performing much better. At a minimum, they're certainly carrying themselves better. They execute policies or explain their policies with a lot more confidence that William Lai's cabinet team did just a year or over the last 2 years previously. So Su Tseng-chang's performance on domestic policy, this has little to do with foreign policy, it has little to do with China-Taiwan relations, little to do with Taiwan's relationship with the U.S. It has to do with domestic policy. It's no wonder that these foreign experts who don't live here don't know much about it, so they don't really cover this angle. But it's a fact that the government has performed much better. No surprise, in an election year, they've rolled out a lot of electoral goodies for the public. What do we mean by goodies? Subsidies, all kinds. A lot of it has to do with childcare, loans for students, low housing or affordable housing and low-cost loans. For the business world, there's been a lot of effort to encourage companies that have operations in China to make new investments in Taiwan. Well, how do you do that? You give them low-cost financing, and the government has been handing out a lot of that. If you're companies, it's like free money. Of course, you're going to take it and you're going to make an announcement that we're going to build another factory or expand our presence back home in Taiwan. The government has even relax rules on the foreign labor that these factories can hire. So we're going to have a lot more laborers from countries like the Philippines or Indonesia coming into Taiwan to take up jobs once this money actually gets deployed, which still hasn't really happened yet. Be that as it may, it still sounds good. It's made for a good talking point. So we see Premier Su Jun-chang on his Facebook talking all the time about the amount of investment commitments by Taiwan companies. So the government has a lot of good news about domestic policy. You foreign experts who keep talking about the Hong Kong or the China angle, you're missing part of the story about why Tsai Ing-wen's poll numbers have increased so dramatically and that her opponents are so far behind. Another reason for this is bad performance by the Kuomintang candidate. So the Kuomintang had a tough primary fight. They waited too long to hold it. By the time they held it, there was three major candidates. Go Taiming, Terry Go, we talked about him many times way back in June. He's the founder of the Foxconn Honhai Technology Products Manufacturing Company. He competed in the Kuomintang primary. The former presidential candidate for the Kuomintang, 4 years ago, the presidential candidate, Eric Julie Lun, also was the mayor of New Taipei City. He was a deputy premier. He was a county magistrate in Taoyuan a long time ago. Not a stranger to Taiwan politics or Kuomintang presidential politics. He sought the nomination as well. He lost. And then Guo Taiming seemed kind of upset about the way the primary process shook out. And he said, well, you know, I'm not really going to endorse Han Kuo-yu. In fact, I'm leaving the party. He even sent an angry open letter saying I'm withdrawing from the party. Then there was a lot of speculation that he was going to run as an independent candidate. He eventually decided not to. But in recent weeks, he's been endorsing non-Kuomintang legislative UN candidates, either unaffiliated, affiliated with James Song's People First Party, or affiliated with Taipei Mayor Ko Wen-je's Taiwan People's Party. So Guo Taiming, Terry Go, he's out there hurting the Kuomintang presidential and legislative candidates. So he's not helpful for the Kuomintang. He's kind of beating them up. No wonder Tsai Ing-wen's poll number goes up and Han Kuo-yu's poll number goes down. And then James Song entered the race, and typically he will get some of the voters who normally would vote for Han Kuo-yu, because a lot of those voters seem to have similar views on Taiwan-China relations, or more importantly, it's just people who will never vote for the DPP. So they might vote for Han Kuo-yu because he's the Kuomintang candidate. They would vote for whoever the Kuomintang candidate is, or they vote for James Song Chu-yu of the People First Party, again, because they just don't vote for anyone who's DPP. So let's look at the latest polling data from the election. Tsai Ing-wen, around 51%. That's where you want to be if you're an incumbent seeking a second term. Han Kuo-yu, a question mark. Why did we put a question mark for Han Kuo-yu's poll numbers? Yes, there are polls out there with the latest data for what Han Kuo-yu's support level is. But Han Kuo-yu in recent days publicly asked his supporters if they get that phone call from a polling company to say, I'm not answering, I support Tsai. He's basically said, I don't believe the poll numbers. All the poll numbers are inaccurate. I actually have a lot more support out there. So to further this narrative, this message that he has a greater support level than poll companies are actually showing in their results, he's telling his supporters, say no, say none of the above, tell them you're going to vote for Tsai Ing-wen. Help this number keep going up. If you're going to vote for me, say you don't know, you haven't decided yet, you're voting for Tsai. Don't tell them you support Han Kuo-yu. This is a fascinating strategy. Now, if we go back a year, a little more than a year ago, early on in the Kaohsiung mayor election, Han Kuo-yu was very far behind the DPP candidate Chen Chi-mai. In the final weeks, right around this period, a month or so before the election, Han Kuo-yu surged ahead of Chen Chi-mai. So all the earlier polls that had him behind turned out to be wrong. He did surge. He did win by a very large amount. It was a big shock for the DPP. So Han Kuo-yu, he's trying to repeat that strategy. Han Kuo-yu is saying to his voters, if you're going to vote for me, say you're not going to vote for me. Say you're going to vote for Tsai or you haven't decided yet. Is this going to help Han Kuo-yu win the election? Well, who knows? He did surprise us a year ago. But unless he's going to substantially improve his performance as a candidate, give the voters policies, an alternative, no more gaffes. He's been gaffe prone on the campaign trail. Have a strong team around him. There's been some concerns there. And the Kuomintang legislative candidates have not been particularly helpful as well, because there's been a lot of controversy and criticism over the legislative UN candidates of the Kuomintang. If he can't fix all of these things, I don't know if his new pole dance move is going to help him recover and beat President Tsai, who's opened up such a large lead. But we'll see in the coming weeks if Han Kuo-yu's pole dance, the vote none of the above move, is going to help him win this election. I'm Ross Feingold, and you've been watching Taiwan Hashtag, hosted by Storm Media.